Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future.
And I don't think that I can trust someone, with my vote if they're not going to respect it.
Last night's vice presidential debate between Tim Walz and JD Vance reminded me how boring debates used to be. Not that that's a bad thing, but it was a stark contrast from the last debate where it was Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. That said, there was one clear moment during this debate that I will get to that I think clearly stood out among the rest, and based on the reactions from debate watchers, that moment is maybe what swayed some people, potentially. There's also data backing up here that one person clearly, I wouldn't say clearly, but one person based on data did win this debate, though maybe not by a lot. That said, a quick summary here before I get to this moment and some of the reactions and the polling to the debate. After watching this debate live, I streamed it with Mike Figueredo of the Humanist Report and journalist Matt Binder. I'll link to that link below the video. I streamed it on my second channel. After watching it, to me, it was a wash. Nobody really stood out. Tim Walz came off as more knowledgeable, as he is. JD Vance came off as boring, which is an improvement from where he normally is, which is loony weirdo. So both candidates, I think, benefited. Nobody really clearly over the other. That said, if you're someone like me who knows a lot more, watching JD Vance just lie again and again and again. He lied about claiming Donald Trump tried to save Obamacare, which is just, how could anybody possibly think that, believe that? Luckily, Tim Walz did, counteract that point. One of the things that Donald Trump tried to do immediately after becoming president was try and repeal Obamacare, which was only saved by John McCain's vote against that. Like, this idea that Trump saved Obamacare is insane. Vance also lied about the peaceful transfer of power. Like, Trump wasn't even at the inauguration for Joe Biden, not to mention the fake slate of electors, Jan 6th. The idea that there was a peaceful transfer of power is completely nuts. And then he also claimed that Vance claimed he never supported a national abortion ban, which he has. He's on tape saying he supports that. So a lot of lying. Those are just three big examples. And then I'll get to the big moment in a bit here. On Tim Walz's side, he I think held back. I think Tim Walz could have been the clear winner here if he was willing to go for the jugular a little more, hit Vance a little harder. It seemed to me like there was clearly an intent from the campaign that they wanted Walz to go out there and just be the nice guy, which he is and he was, but he was almost too nice. Agreeing with JD Vance several times on at least the problems. One point, I think it was about gun violence. He says, JD Vance, I know you care about this issue. Like, no, he doesn't. It's like, what? Why try and give some humanity to JD Vance when he doesn't need you to do that? It's one thing to be the nice guy. It's another thing to humanize your opponent in a way that they don't deserve. So I just think Tim Walz was too nice. That said, he didn't really have any terrible moments except for his answer on China, which was just meandering and went on and on and on. Worth mentioning, the question about China was ridiculous. It was about a trip he took in 1989 that he claims he was there during the uprising, and he wasn't actually there during Tiananmen Square, but he was there afterward. Regardless, it was a trip he took in 1989 that he claimed he was there at a time that he wasn't, and he was there like a few months later. Why? First of all, why does this matter? Second of all, if you're going to be asked this question, all you have to do is be like, yeah, it was, this trip was 30 years ago. I forgot exactly when I was there, but the aftermath of that moment was still in the air when I was in China. That's all you have to mention. But he went on for like 2 minutes about taking trips with students to China to learn about the culture. Fine, but at least answer the question first, clearly, before diving into that. He was asked a second time that question, and then it got really just awkward and there was dead air. So that was a bad moment. But luckily, it wasn't about, policy or lying about an important issue. It was just about a trip he took to China. So who cares? This was the moment, though. This moment here, I think, clearly stood out among the rest. And luckily for Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, this happened near the end of the debate. So this is going to be in people's minds a lot more.
This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously.
That was an incredible moment. It is a risk for a candidate to directly ask the other candidate a question, because if they answer it properly and catch you, then it backfires, right? All JD Vance really had to do, because here's the reality. JD Vance is still trying to appeal to a certain base, as well as, of course, he doesn't want to anchor Trump, right? So he doesn't want to be on stage with Trump watching this debate saying that Trump lost in 2020. So he's not going to directly say that. What he could have said, because this is what other Republicans have been doing, and it's still a smarmy way to get around it, but he could have said that we all know that Joe Biden is the president, which doesn't directly answer the question that did Donald Trump lose, but it tries to get around it in a roundabout way, which, again, I don't think comes off to people as being honest, but it comes off better than doing a left turn into censorship. Like, what? Where do you get? You're talking about democracy and the peaceful transfer of power, and Kamala Harris is bad on censorship. This is coming from the party that bans books. This is the party that wants to control your body. This is the party that is going backwards on gay rights and doesn't support gay marriage. Like, what kind of, you are censoring people's lives. This idea that you're going to bring this up in a discussion where you are unwilling to acknowledge that Trump lost the election, that completely exposed him. And it isn't just me thinking this, because I saw that, thought it was a good moment. But then I saw some of the reaction from people online, or I should say from some debate watchers. These are undecided voters. Come on. Who are you people? How do you still exist? What's in your brains? I think this is more, these aren't people that are between Vance and Trump, aren't between Trump and Harris, but are more so, they want to be encouraged to vote. So it's either, are they going to come out to vote for Kamala Harris? Or are they going to come out to vote for Trump if they lean right? I think it's more about that, as opposed to people being, I don't know if I trust Trump or Kamala. I'm going to vote for one of them, but I don't know who. I think it's less of that and more just people deciding if they're going to vote at all. But here is a clip of a reaction to that moment.
And I actually want to start with overall impressions, guys, because all 7 of you came in undecided. One of you said they've made up their mind. Ryan, who are you going to vote for, and what kind of solidified that opinion?
Well, I'm going to be voting for Kamala Harris. You know, one of the stark sort of aspects of that debate that really stuck with me was when they were talking about January 6th and how Mike Pence certified the election, and they were wondering if J.D. Vance would certify the election should Trump lose. And, you know, J.D. Vance didn't really give us a definitive answer, and I'm disappointed in that fact. And I don't think that I can trust someone, you know, with my vote if they're not going to respect it.
So all night, JD Vance did a fairly good job on his part in trying to come off as more normal, as he has been. The other clips and past interviews of him have just come off as he's a loon. But in this debate, he came off as more normal. Until this moment, I think this helped to undermine and exposed the rest of his night, that this is just a lying politician. When you get to a moment where you can't admit an obvious thing, it exposes you. And that he's clearly doing it to, you know, kiss up to Trump and speak to a certain base that thinks Trump still won in 2020. So if there are any actual undecided voters or people that don't yet feel the need to come out and vote, that may lean Democrat, but don't know if they even should vote at all, this moment could help to push them in a direction that, yes, they should go out to vote, because it isn't just Trump that is a loon, but it's also J.D. Vance, who you could argue is maybe even more dangerous because he's a loon in sheep's clothing, in a guy that's pretending to be just a caring politician. So there's another person on the panel that also brings us up later on in their discussion. And even though I guess she's still an undecided voter, this moment also stood out to her.
Hope, what's the one issue you're keying on these last 35 days?
So coming into this debate, I was definitely focused on how trustworthy are the candidates, and I think that's still my main issue. And I thought this was a great civil debate, and like how trustworthy I think the candidates are grew for both of them, in my opinion. But the one thing that stuck out to me was Vance's refusal to say whether or not Trump lost the 2020 election, and then also how he kind of said that carbon may not cause climate change, and kind of just his refusal to agree with those things that most people very clearly see makes me think he's not as trustworthy.
So another voter there bothered by the moment where J.D. Vance could not acknowledge the results of the 2020 election. That said, the other part of that clip that stood out to me is that this is a voter that cares about climate change. And she appears to still be in between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Now, I get being an activist and being angered that the Democratic Party isn't doing enough, but I don't get being in between Trump and Kamala Harris. Like anybody that cares about the climate, how could you even at all be considering that JD Vance may be an honest person? Like, just discovering now that JD Vance may be untrustworthy because he's not recognizing that climate has an impact or that carbon doesn't have an impact on the climate. Where have you been? This is the Republican Party. How is this news to you? Like, I get people don't watch don't pay attention to the news every day, whatever. But do you not absorb culture? Do you not go to school? Do you not talk to other people in your life? Like, somebody at some point, somewhere, you must have absorbed at some point that Republicans don't believe in doing anything about climate change. That must have touched you at some point. How is this a person? Not her fault. I don't want to harp on this voter. It's good to see people like this, just to be reminded that they do exist. But I don't know how you exist. How do you exist? Unless you're living in a cave and you have no internet, no TV, I don't understand how you exist. But you exist. So let me get to some polling of the night, because clearly there was a winner. J.D. Vance by 1%. There's actually more data to show Tim Walz actually benefited more. But according to this CBS News poll, J.D. Vance by 1 point over Tim Walz here. 17% say a tie. As I said, it was a wash. But interestingly, when you go deeper into it, the numbers actually benefited Walz. Again, by a small margin. So the tone of the debate, people thought were generally positive, which I guess it was. At the debate, they most sounded reasonable. So Walz got higher reasonable rating there compared to Vance. Vance got more extreme rating compared to Walz. If needed, are they prepared to be president? So higher percentage said yes for Walz compared to Vance. Spent most of their time Walz explaining their own views, 54%, compared to Vance at 45%. And this was actually what the voters wanted to see going into the debate. They want to see these candidates explain their own views as opposed to go on the attack. So this number benefits Walz as well. And there is some more. Favorable opinion. This, again, among debate watchers here. So before the debate, Walz had 52%. After the debate, he's at 60%. J.D. Vance before the debate is at 40%. After the debate at 49%. So, I mean, yeah, like not a major benefit to anybody here. But still, both of them grew in favorability. And was there another one here? This one here. So CNN, this is the CNN data from SSRS. Net favorable view among candidates. So before the debate, Walz was at plus 14. After the debate, he's at plus 37, which is a bigger number. It's higher growth compared to J.D. Vance, who was at minus 22 and is now at minus 3, showing you just how unliked J.D. Vance is. But this debate helped him because, again, he came off as more normal, even though if you knew what he was saying, he was lying the entire time. But he did it in a way that seemed less crazy, I suppose. Especially, it probably helped him as well that Trump was so insane in the last debate that all J.D. Vance had to do here was just come out and act like a normal politician, and people would have fell for it, and it appears that they did. So he benefited as well. Now, last clip here. This is from MSNBC, or NBC, and their debate watchers.
If you were going to say who won tonight, I would say that Tim Walz won. I wonder, would everybody say that Walz won this debate? A show of hands. No pressure. Okay. Not sure, Claire.
All right, so Pennsylvania debate watchers say that Tim Walz won the debate. I don't put a lot of stock in this. I just think no one won the debate. I don't think it matters. I think this is, it's hard to say would matter anyways because it is the VP debate. There really would have had to be just a complete meltdown by one person like there was from Trump last time for there to be some movement here in the race. I don't think this is going to have any real impact on the race at all. And if it has any impact, it's going to be that moment where JD Vance cannot acknowledge Trump lost in 2020. But what are your thoughts on the debate? Let me know below in the comments.